going from Minnesota to New York. And that was a big scene on folk music. And a year after Bob got there, Phil Oakes arrived. And he was kind of like a somewhat more political Bob Dylan for a while. Anyway, he wrote a lot of songs. He released about 9 albums, I think, if you count the one in Canada. And then he suicided in '76, depressed by everything. But I'm going to try to sing one of his later songs. It's called No More Songs. And on Friday was his birthday. That's the reason I'm doing this. Or it would have been his birthday if he was still alive. It would have been his 85th birthday. When Phil went to college, we should talk about dads. That's the theme, right?
That is evidently the theme.
Yeah, his dad was a medical doctor who bounced around because he was up and down, what's the word? Manic depressive.
Bipolar.
And in those days, they didn't have real good ways of treating that. Phil was also manic depressive, and he self-medicated with alcohol later on, which turns out to be not the best course.
Nope.
But anyway, he did write a bunch of songs, and since he died, his sister started organizing these tribute concerts all over the country, and so they still go on. I don't have another one currently scheduled in Minnesota, but I'm going to sing this song. But anyway, Phil went to college, and kind of a strained relationship with his dad, and his roommate was named Jim Glover. And Jim played the guitar and taught Phil how to play the guitar. This is like 1959 or something. And Phil was a journalist, and he went with Jim to visit his father, who was a member of the Socialist Party. And Phil became radicalized and wrote a lot of songs with radical things, although I don't think either of the songs I'm singing tonight really reflect that. But anyway, after a while, Jim dropped out of college and went to Greenwich Village. And when he got there, he met this woman, Jean Ray, and they became Jim and Jean and recorded 3 albums in the 60s that nobody remembers. But they covered Phil Oakes songs because Phil followed about 8 months later or a year later and moved in with Jim and Jean. And after a little while together in the apartment, Jean decided she needed to find Phil a girlfriend and talked a friend of hers into going out with Phil, and they moved into their own apartment, so Jean was happy. Jean, by the way, later kind of flirted with Neil Young, and he wrote a couple songs about her on his album. Anyway, she wrote a song about the bus to... Anyway, I'm kind of going on, but Jim Glover died, and I just found out on Friday. He also went on to have something of a solo career, and he was always an anti-war activist, and he lived in Florida for the last couple decades. And the Phil Oakes fan community just kind of found out on Friday when I publicized it, because I'd seen it and went to his Facebook page, and there's no obit or anything, but I guess he lived by himself and didn't have much in the way of relatives. Anyway, so I thought, well, I want to sing a couple of Phil Oakes songs I haven't sung here before, and I'm going to sing No More Songs. And there is a video on YouTube of Phil with his old friend Jim Glover singing it. And then I'm going to end up singing Hands, which I've sung a million times here. And maybe I can get Steve to come up and sing. And if anyone else thinks they can sing with us, I've got a bunch of copies. You can come up and sing with us too. But the reason I decided I have to sing that is that the last verse that I sing these days was not written by Phil. It was written by Jim Glover. And he saved this song from obscurity because Phil sang it one time in 1963 in the cafe. And someone was taping in the back with one of those newfangled tape recorders that were so small you could carry them around with you. They were still reel-to-reel, but it was something that could sit on a table and wasn't in a big studio. And so years later, after Phil was dead, someone said, hey, there's this song here. And I think it was Sunny called Jim because she could hear Jim on the tape also. And he remembered it. When Phil sang it, the chorus went, the hands of the man, the man, the man. And after Phil sang this song, Jim said, that's an awful lot of mans in that song. and all of the song was about men in unions and so forth. And of course, there were women working in the country even in the 1960s. And And so that may be why Phil never sang it again. But anyway, they revived it, they transcribed it, they put it in Sing Out, and they changed the chorus a little bit. So when you hear Woman, that's something that Jim Glover put in. And then eventually, Jim wrote another verse. I kind of wish it was about some of the women who died in the awful union things. You know, the union fought because women who were garment workers were locked in their factory, and when the factory burned, they couldn't get out.
Sure,
And other horrible things like that, that are kind of behind some of these little stories. But he came up with a different way to bring in an aspect of women. Sorry, I'm babbling on. But anyway, I'm going to start with No More Songs. Hello, 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 is there anybody home? I've only called to say I'm sorry. The drums are in the dawn, and all the voices gone, and it seems that there are no more songs. Once I knew a girl, she was a flower in a flame. I loved her as the sea sings sadly. Now the ashes of the dream can be found in the magazines, and it seems that there are no more songs. Once I knew a sage who sang upon the stage. He told about the world, his lover. A ghost without a name stands ragged in the rain, and it seems that there are no more songs. Rebels, they were here, they came beside the door. They told me that the moon was bleeding. Then all to my surprise, they took away my eyes, and it seems that there are no more songs. Star is in the sky, it's time to say goodbye. A whale is on the beach, it's dying. A white flag in my hand, and a white bone on the sand. It seems that there are